Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is MK Vanguard. I got a new name, got a new lease on spreading my liberal cultural Marxist propaganda all over the internet. So we're going to look at some PragerU videos and we're going to debunk some points they make. So let's do this.
I recently watched a group of protesters, most of them young, denouncing President Donald Trump's immigration policies. They were waving Mexican flags and shouting, "Si se puede!" Yes, we can. This is now the rallying cry of the open borders left, but it wasn't always. In fact, I wondered if a single person at the protest knew where it came from. The slogan first became famous 50 years ago, thanks to Cesar Chavez. He was the founder of the United Farm Workers Union. When Chavez said, "Si se puede," he meant something very different. Yes, we can seal the borders.
Hey, I ran into these protesters at the border protesting for open borders, and they were chanting "Si se puede." That means yes, we can. You know who else said "Si se puede"? Cesar Chavez. And Cesar Chavez didn't want illegal immigration. Boom, checkmate, liberals.
Cesar Chavez hated illegal immigration. He was Hispanic, obviously, and definitely on the left, but he fought to keep illegal Mexican immigrants out of this country. He understood that peasants from Latin America will always work for less than Americans will. That's why employers prefer them. Chavez knew that. As long as we have a poor country bordering California, he once explained, it's going to be very difficult to win strikes. In 1969, Chavez led a march down the center of California to protest the hiring of illegal immigrant produce pickers. Marching alongside him was Democratic Senator Walter Mondale and the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, the longtime aide to Martin Luther King.
So, about Cesar Chavez being supposedly anti-immigration. Cesar Chavez, his problem with illegal immigration was not that he had any kind of disdain for illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants. It's because he knew that employers tended to hire undocumented immigrants because they were not subject to the minimum wage or any kind of benefits or anything like that, which does press down wages. This is correct. But as we'll see more in this video, his representation of this is that, well, Cesar Chavez opposed undocumented immigrants, so obviously he would have supported, the mainline Republican policies of today, but that is not the case whatsoever.
10 years later, Chavez dispatched armed union members into the desert to assault Mexican nationals who were trying to sneak across the border. Chavez's men beat immigrants with chains and whips made of barbed wire. Illegal aliens who dared to work as scabs had their houses firebombed and their cars burned. Chavez wasn't embarrassed about any of this. He bragged about it. No matter. Chavez remains a progressive hero. President Obama declared his birthday a commemorative federal holiday. It's an official day off in a half a dozen states. There's a college named after him and dozens of public schools. Cesar Chavez's life is a reminder of how much the left has changed and how quickly.
Cesar Chavez was not a part of this incident. This incident did happen, sort of. There was an incident where Chavez's labor union did go out and have an altercation with undocumented immigrants at the border. Cesar Chavez was not a part of it. This was organized by his brother Manuel, and there's no evidence that Cesar was connected to it at all whatsoever. But of course, Tucker does not make this clear at all. And you'll notice how he just kind of says Chavez, the last name Chavez, without specifying whether it's Cesar or Manuel he's talking about. That was intentionally misleading. And going back to what I was saying before about undocumented immigrants and how they affect wages, Cesar Chavez was one of the big proponents of the 1986 immigration reform bill that was passed under the Reagan administration. This bill gave amnesty to about 3 million undocumented immigrants. And like I said, this was under Reagan, so a little extra tidbit there for you Reagan lovers. He gave amnesty to 3 million undocumented immigrants. try and wrap your brain around that. But so again, it's not that Cesar Chavez had a problem with undocumented immigrants themselves coming in. He had a problem with how business owners would exploit the labor of undocumented immigrants because they wouldn't have to pay them fair wages or give them any benefits. But he was obviously completely okay with having undocumented immigrants come in and be given amnesty and be made a part of the system so that they could be taxed and paid a fair wage to keep from wages being suppressed. Cesar Chavez was a big proponent of amnesty. He helped get amnesty passed for 3 million undocumented immigrants, and this narrative that Carlson is trying to push here is based on twisted facts, and in the case of this Manuel Chavez incident, just basically a complete lie.
Until recently, most Democrats agreed with Chavez. They opposed unchecked immigration because they knew it hurt American workers, and they were right.
The mainline Democratic Party still does that. Show me one mainstream Democratic senator or congressperson or just Democratic politician that says they want completely open borders. Show me one.
One study by a Harvard economist examined the effects of the mass migration of Cuban refugees to this country in 1980, the so-called Mariel boat lift. He found that American workers in Miami with a high school education saw their wages fall by more than 30% after the refugees arrived. If you believe in supply and demand, this is not surprising.
Okay, so I looked into this a little bit. The Mariel boat lifts incidents back in the 1980s. And once again, Carlson is manipulating the facts to serve a false narrative. There was a Berkeley study that was done on this incident, to which I will be linking in the description if anyone wants to look at it to see that I'm not, giving misleading interpretation or whatever. So there was a slight wage drop off for people who were had under a high school education, no high school degree. That part of it is true, but for all other groups, the wages remained relatively the same. There was no major change. The change in wages was negligible in results to this mass Cuban immigration into the Miami area. So that part of it is already misleading, how Carlson is discussing this. Now, some might look at the numbers on the Berkeley report and note that there was a significant spike in unemployment around the same time as this incident was going on. But if you will see numbers, if you compare the numbers to other cities around the country, the Berkeley report uses examples like Los Angeles and Atlanta and I think one other, and it shows that this unemployment spike was consistent in other parts of the country as well, far away from Florida. So these numbers cannot be ascribed to the sudden influx of Cuban refugees. So again, to summarize, there was a slight decrease in the wages for people who didn't have a high school education in the Miami area and in the towns surrounding in Florida, but the wages for basically everybody else remained pretty steady, or the difference was negligible. And the unemployment rate was spiking all across the country. This was not something that was specifically a result of these Cuban immigrants coming into Florida.
After the fall of Saigon in 1975, Democratic Governor Jerry Brown opposed letting Vietnamese refugees into California on the grounds that the state already had enough poor people. As he put it at the time, there's something a little strange about saying, let's bring in 500,000 more people when we can't take care of the 1 million Californians out of work. First-term Senator Joe Biden of Delaware agreed. He introduced federal legislation to curb the arrival of the Vietnamese.
I think there's a modern-day parallel here, maybe with all of the Middle Eastern conflicts that the United States is currently involved with, the invasion of Iraq, the invasion of Afghanistan, the U.S.'s involvement in Syria, that's contributing heavily to the migrant crisis going on in the Middle East and Europe right now. It's almost as if, now hear me out here, it's almost as if we stop fighting these illegal offensive wars, maybe we would have less of a problem with refugees seeking asylum in first world countries. But let's ignore that. Let's build a fucking wall. Clearly that is the rational solution here.
2 decades later, leading Democrats were still wary of mass immigration, especially illegal immigration. As Bill Clinton put it in the 1995 State of the Union address, Americans are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public services they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. No prominent Democrat would say anything like that today without being denounced as a racist. Clinton got a standing ovation.
Once again, this is still pretty mainline opinion for most Democrats. If you can show me an example of a major Democrat or several major Democrats, just a handful of Democrats, 3 or 4 Democratic senators that say that they want completely open borders with Mexico, you won't find it.
As late as 2006, there were still liberals who cared about the economic effects of immigration, legal or illegal. Immigration reduces the wages of domestic workers who compete with immigrants, explained economist Paul Krugman in the New York Times. We'll need to reduce the inflow of low-skilled immigrants. Mainly that means better controls on illegal immigration. That same year, Senator Hillary Clinton voted for a fence on the Mexican border. So did Barack Obama and Chuck Schumer and 23 other Senate Democrats. Not anymore. 20 years after Bill Clinton told Americans they had the right to be upset about illegal immigration, his wife scolded the country for enforcing border controls. So what changed?
All the way up to 2006, liberal Democrats cared about immigration. Okay, well, here's 2 interesting facts for you, and I encourage all of you to fact check me on this if you don't believe me. One fact, Obama set the record for deportations. He deported more people than in the Bush administration, and there were more deportations than in the Clinton administration, by far. Those deportations under the Obama administration numbered around 3 million. So again, that's more than Bush, that's more than Clinton, that's more than any president in modern U.S. history. So Obama set the record for deportations. Another fact to keep in mind is that we have had a net loss of immigration from Mexico since 2009. Since 2009, the number is something like 100,000 people net loss, people returning to Mexico more than coming to the United States. So there's over 100,000 more people that are returning to Mexico than coming into the United States. We've had that net loss going on since 2009, so basically a decade.
Not the economics of it. The law of supply and demand remained in effect. It's not a coincidence that as illegal immigration surged, wages for American workers stagnated. What changed is that Democrats stopped caring about those workers, about the middle class, really. Why?
There is a problem with undocumented immigrants coming here. That is true. The problem with undocumented immigrants coming here is that because they are undocumented, they are not entitled to any kind of legal protections. They have the threat of deportation looming over them at all times, and so employers can manipulate this fact and pay them subpar, below minimum wages, and they can deny them all kinds of benefits. And this has the results of decreasing wages for legal native workers as well as legal immigrant workers. So he's trying to make it sound like, well, obviously the solution to this problem is we need to have far tighter border controls. The other option is to do something like what Cesar Chavez would be in favor for, which is to grant amnesty to these people that are coming in, and that way they can be a part of the tax system, they'll pay taxes, they'll be entitled to the same benefits and the same wages as everybody else in this country, and wages will no longer be depreciated for other workers working in the United States.
Here's the answer in 4 simple facts. 1. According to a recent study from Yale, there are at least 22 million illegal immigrants living in the United States.
Whoa. Hold on. No. So this 22 million number, I looked into it. There was a study done by Yale University that said the number of illegal immigrants in the United States is, I believe it said anywhere between, I forget, 16 to 29 million, something like that. This number is not substantiated by any other group or organization that keeps track of undocumented workers in the United States and has been widely discredited by these different organizations. The real number of undocumented immigrants in the United States, as far as the accepted consensus based on the data is concerned, is somewhere between 11 and 13 million.
2. Democrats plan to give all of them citizenship.
Holy shit! The Democrats want to give 22 million illegal citizenship? Half of which don't even exist? These guys got to be stopped. They're trying to give phantom Mexicans citizenship.
Read the Democrats' 2016 party platform. 3. Studies show the overwhelming majority of first-time immigrant voters vote Democrat. 4. The biggest landslide in American presidential history was only 17 million votes. Do the math. The payoff for Democrats? Permanent electoral majority for the foreseeable future. In a word, power. That's the point, no matter what they tell you. American workers be damned. I'm Tucker Carlson.
Why don't non-white voters tend to vote for the Republican Party, Tucker? I wonder why that could be. Well, clearly it's because millions of illegal aliens are voting for Democrats. Obviously, no other possible explanation. Okay, so that's the end of the video. This video is complete bullshit, and that's my final critique of it. It's bullshit. If you came for some well-articulated closing comments, you have come to the wrong channel, my friend. But thank you for watching. Let me know what I should talk about in a future video. This is MK Vanguard signing off.